Welcome to the show, Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif Halaby along with Jeff Girard. We're talking about your family's finances. Of course, getting out of debt, managing money, planning for your future. That's what it's all about when you're trying to save. You know, a lot of folks have company retirement plans. What do you do with that 401k that you had at your job, your work for so many years? It's been sitting there and you had it and you left.
That's right. That's a big transition for a lot of people because they have money in a retirement account that they've been probably socking away for lots and lots of years with really no intention on doing anything but just that, putting money into it. But now that you've left that job, there's a little trigger here. Now you have an option or two that you didn't have when you were still working there.
You know, a lot of times people will take their retirement accounts and they'll use them to pay bills or to do things while they are still working.
Yes.
Or worse yet, if they lose a job, they think, oh, well, it's my emergency savings account. Look, your retirement account has a job to do, and the job is not to be spent on things along the way where you're saying, oh, you know, I'm going to use this money to pay my house payment. Look, I guess if it's homeless or use your retirement account, of course you do it. But it's not lazy bum staying at home or use your retirement account. Now, look, before you call in and get upset at Jeff, think about this for just a second.
That's right.
If you don't have a job, your job is to find a job. What does that mean? I sit on the computer all day at the Starbucks or at the library and just send out resumes and research jobs and look at, YouTube videos of cats? No. Your job is to get your fanny out, take a shower, clean up, put on your whatever your work outfit is. If it's a mechanic gear, you put on that on. If it's a business suit, you put on a business suit, and anywhere in between. And you drive and you walk into those buildings, whether it's downtown LA, if that's where you're working, if that's your industry. You go to each lawyer's office, you hand carry in resumes. Well, we only accept online resumes. Wonderful. Who would I leave it to? You got to be a face. You have to be creative. I share that with you because a lot of folks just kind of, and they give up. And they sit around and they say, well, you know what? At this date and time, my life is all about one thing and one thing only, feeling sorry for myself. So don't think that the 401k's job is to go out and just be there for you to liquidate when you're in your 40s or your 50s or worse when you're in your 30s. Because by the time you are young, if you have thousands of dollars saved, think of what that will be just 10, 15, 20 years from now, and when you're ready to retire 30 years from now if you're in your 30s.
That's right. And I think you touched on something important here. Several things, actually, but one that stands out to me is I think the 401k idea of being a place where we can take loans, I think that loan provision, it's helpful, but it's probably one of the most dangerous things that are out there because some people treat this like a put and take account. But bringing back the idea that every dollar has a job, every account has a job. This is a retirement account. It's a 401k. It's got these rules and these regulations around it to where you put money in, and it's not supposed to be easy to get it back out. Now, certainly if you leave a job or if you're asked to leave, however, whether it's by default or by design, and you transition to another job, you do have some options. But remember, that 401k, you get some tax deferred, some tax favorability by rolling it over, keeping it a retirement account. We'll talk about how you can do that in just a minute. But I think people just really lose a lot of traction on their retirement savings by cashing this type of an account out. They don't realize how much is actually lost. And not just the dollars that are there. Arif, you mentioned it perfectly. It's what could come of that account. The dollars that you have opportunity with down the road. And if you don't save them in that account and you pay those taxes now, it's quite a headache to try to catch up.
You know, I had to do that in my 20s. It was in a tough spot, like most people, and I remember taking money out. It was my late 20s.
Yeah.
And it'd go through that experience, and I just imagine what that money could have done today. Even if it doubled every 15 years,
right.
That's a low interest rate. What that would have been, because that's almost 30 years now have passed, so that'd be two doublings.
My goodness.
You're looking at $250,000 that would have been in that account. Now, raise your hand if you wouldn't like an extra $200,000, of course. So what you're thinking is, look, it's only $10,000. It's only $26,000. Well, by the time you receive it, it's less than half. Because for so many people, what are you seeing? You're seeing people that are taking their retirement savings, taking their life savings, putting them in a place where they're just going to spend it. They go through the fund. So keep in mind that the objective is for you to go through life, have some fun with your money, live, but setting aside that 401k. So now you leave your job. What do you do with it? You have some options. One of those is what's called a rollover. Now, what does that mean? What's a rollover mean?
Well, a rollover is a transaction where you take the 401k, and actually you don't take it at all. Your company would distribute it to your new IRA. So basically, for very simple steps here, you can walk into any financial institution, basically any, like a community bank, a credit union, your bank, and open up an IRA. Now, you can open up a shell. You don't have to put any money into it because this is going to be the receptacle of the 401k dollars. So you open up the IRA, step one. It's a shell. There's no money in it. Then you tell your old company employer, your old employer that holds the 401k, roll over this old 401k into my IRA, probably fill out some forms, and they transfer those dollars right over there. Now, that rollover doesn't come to you. It's not money that's taxable to you. You might get a check in the mail, but you're going to just deposit it right in that IRA. There's no tax consequence. It stays pre-tax as long as you were putting money in pre-tax, and it's a favorable way of doing that.
Yeah, that rollover option that Jeff's talking about goes directly from institution to institution, from company to company, meaning I don't want you to take a check. For a lot of people, they go, oh, just cash it out and put it back. That's called a 60-day rollover. A lot of dangers happen with a 60-day rollover. We won't get into those today, but I do want you to know that you can avoid all of that mix-up, all of that IRS paperwork that may come later, and just pick it up from one company. That institution rolls it over. One of the things that you can do, and it might work for some people, we'll give you some ideas of when it may work, is to roll it over to your new 401k or your new company retirement plan. If you have failed to provide a savings for you and your family, emergency savings, or you've gone through it, right? Sometimes emergencies happen and you take that down to zero. And you may need in the future to borrow from your 401k. Now look, we told you that's the worst thing you can do because it pulls money from your future and you spend it today. But if it is the last case for you and you have to take these funds and borrow from them in the future, you can by rolling it over from your 401k into another 401k, and it boosts the amount of money that you can borrow. Because taking money out of your 401k without paying a penalty, you have to borrow it, in which you pay interest and payments. Now, granted, those interest and payments are your own money going back to you, but sometimes retirement accounts will restrict your ability or limit your ability to even add more money to that account, meaning you can't add any more money to it, and not until the loan is paid off. So that's kind of a less than exciting way to do things, but you see that, and they do that, and you have to know that. If you're going to go down the road, they say, we're not going to let you put more money into retirement until you pay off this debt. All right. If that's the case, remember the 401k rules give you the 50% borrow.
That's right. And what Arif's talking about is if you have a brand new job and a brand new 401k, chances are you have very little money in it. So taking money that you might have from that old 401k, moving it over into the new one, now you can just about, in every plan we've seen so far, there might be one or two out there that's different, but in most cases, that money is almost immediately available to be borrowed. And you can borrow up to 50%, as Arif was saying, or a maximum under current law of $50,000. So if you roll over $200,000, you can only borrow $50,000. If you have $50,000, you can borrow $25,000. So it's basically a $50,000 or 50%, whichever's less.
And that's important if you're trying to save and build for your emergency bucket. Having that as a provision is fine, but you get no more borrowing benefit after $100,000. Okay, so remember, 50,000 is the maximum. So as Jeff was saying, if you have 50, you can take out 25,000. If you have 100, you can take out 50,000.
Right.
If you have 500,000, you can only take out 50,000. So the dollar, half a dollar for dollar benefit is that number. So if you already have $100,000 in your account, or you have more than that, you can move some into your new 401k to get that lending provision and the rest into safer money choices, which means you are not going to lose the principal or any interest that you gain. And there are a variety of those choices, and we call it the green line, or we call it safer money. That's kind of what we do. And it gives you both the ability to access that money from one place, and yet the same ability to save some or preserve some of that from the market.
That's right. And you may go from, and you may say, gosh, listen to all these accounts you guys are talking about. I had one 401k. I've never owned an IRA. Now I've got this other 401k. You have the ability to move your money in different places. There's no such thing as just having one retirement account or one retirement plan, in my opinion, because you need several sources of income to have a nice, steady stream of income from different places when it comes to retirement. So having an IRA with some of the choices, the benefits of doing that is you may have different options, which you do in most cases. An IRA gives you a greater breadth, more choices, more options as far as what you can, how you can direct your savings. So you might only have 10 choices in your 401k, and they might all be places where you pay fees and your money's at risk of losing the principal. So if you wanted to have some of that money be in a safer place or do something different for you or have different options, that's where that IRA really comes into play. And part of the old 401k, the reason why we encourage a lot of folks in most cases to just get it out of there, because you don't really, number one, it's off your radar, right? You're really not paying attention to the fees or how it's moving. You're not opening statements probably. In most cases, that's what we're seeing. You don't have the ability to borrow from an old 401k, and you can't add new money to it.
And not only that, Jeff, when the company that administers the 401k, who's now required by law to come out at least on an annual basis and give classes and teach you about your accounts, what they are, what they aren't, that actual class that takes place is for the employees.
Correct.
You can't tell me your employer is going to notify you if you've been gone for 3 years and say, hey, come on into the meeting and learn about your account. So instead, you're kind of funneled down this road that takes you to an 800 number. And some person on the phone who maybe is a quality, maybe knows what they're doing, maybe not. So there's a challenge there. There's a knowledge and an information gap that gets wider the longer you are away from that company, because the day-to-day communications that are communicated through HR is often missing for that employee.
And do you think if your old company decides to switch 401k providers, that they're going to call you and tell you, hey, we've decided to go in another direction and we're going to switch companies? And what does that do, Arif, when someone's got retirement savings in an account, when they're changing providers? They're going from company A to company B that provides their retirement accounts.
We call it a blackout period, and that's what it's called. It's called the dark period or the blackout period. What that means is that usually for anywhere between 3 to 8 weeks, you cannot change the allocations. So if the market starts to go down quickly or up quickly and you want to move things around, you can't do that. If you want to take money out and borrow some or take it out of the account or just cancel it or roll it over, you can't. You can't do anything with it, just about. And that is important because during that window of time, if the market is going one direction or another, or worse, your personal financial situation is going one way or another, you can't access those funds until the new ownership of the new company takes over. So those are usually weeks away, and you're kind of in this frozen period. So what a lot of clients have told us is they just go straight, when they find out that's happening and they're still employed and they can't take their retirement account, their 401k, out of that company, then what they do instead is they go to the money market account and they sit there. Not a lot of interest, but while they sit there, they tell me that it is now protected from the market dropping and they can't do anything about it, or they're at least for sure knowing what's happening at the new company when that dollars come over, and then they can reallocate it later. But that's an option that a lot of folks have chosen to use to protect their principal, protect their money, and keep them from going backwards. We're going to come back in just a minute as we continue with what to do with your old 401k. If you choose to roll it out into an IRA, what are some of those options? And even some strategies that I can tell you financial advisors don't even know, because we end up having to educate them when we come back. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour on your place for news, talk, and information. This is AM 1220 KHTS.